After a huge series win over the division rival New York Mets to take over first place in the National League East, the Phillies went down to Houston and have lost the first two games of this three-game series to the Astros. They were shut out again Wednesday night. They lost 2-0, second consecutive game being shut out, both by the Astros. The Phillies haven't scored a run since a two-run seventh inning in Sunday night's win over the New York Mets. That's 19 consecutive scoreless innings for the Phillies offense. They wrap up this three-game series down in Houston against the Astros today, this afternoon on Thursday. Christopher Sanchez is taking the mound for the Phillies to try to get at least one win in this series and avoid being swept. And then they head to Atlanta right after this over the weekend for a three-game series against the Braves. Welcome into Phillies Daily, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Henley. Make sure you guys subscribe for more Phillies content right here on Phillies Daily. So the Phillies offense has been wasting quality starts by the Phillies pitching these past two games against the Astros. Obviously, if you watched the game on Tuesday night to open up this three-game series, Ranger Suarez, who's having an incredible season in 2025, huge bounce back from his struggles last year in the second half of the season. Ranger Suarez went out there. He pitched 7 2/3 innings. He was scoreless through the first 7 innings. In that 8th inning, he went out, but he did end up letting a solo home run, which ended up being the game-winning home run for the Astros because they picked up that 1-0 win in the series opener against the Phillies. Suarez went 7 2/3 innings, allowed just 4 hits. He had 2 walks, had just that 1 earned run that came in the 8th inning, and he had 7 strikeouts. Unfortunately, that home run was all the Astros needed because the Phillies offense just simply couldn't push a run across the plate in that ball game. Much of the same last night in Wednesday's loss, I should say, against the Astros. They lost 2-0. Like I said a little bit earlier in this video, Zach Wheeler, the Phillies ace, one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, a National League Cy Young candidate. He went 6 strong innings for the Phillies in that loss. He also allowed just 4 hits. He did have 3 walks, didn't have his best stuff really to start the game, but then he settled in and he was purely dominant, just like we all know Zach Wheeler is whenever he takes the mound. He also allowed just 1 earned run, just like Suarez in those 6 innings last night against the Astros. He had 8 strikeouts in those 6 innings. As I said, the Phillies offense has been struggling in this Astros series. They, especially with runners in scoring position, obviously they have not scored a run so far through these first 2 games, through these first 18 innings of this Astros series. They were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position in Tuesday's 1-0 loss to the Astros. And then last night in Wednesday's 2-0 loss to the Astros, the Phillies were 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Unfortunately, that one hit that they did have was a Kyle Schwarber infield single, and a run ended up not scoring. It loaded the bases for the Phillies with 1 out in the 8th inning. They had a great chance to score to at least, at the time, just push a run home, tie it up at the time because it was 1-0 at the time there in the top of the 8th inning. Couldn't get the job done. Alec Boehm, one of their best hitters this year, he struck out to get the second out of the inning. And then Nick Castellanos, who's also been a very good hitter for the Phillies in 2025, he came up next and he grounded out to end the inning. The Phillies could not score with bases loaded and just 1 out. You have to be able to do that at the major league level. If you're going to be a championship team, you have to find ways to get that run home from third, especially in a situation like that late in the game to tie it up, gain some momentum heading into, obviously, the bottom half of the 8th inning and the 9th inning. Phillies couldn't do it. The Phillies starting rotation obviously is one of the best in Major League Baseball. They're dominant, they're elite, but none of that matters if you can't score runs as an offense. That's, plain and simple. You're not going to win a game if you don't score a run. Phillies haven't scored a run in the last 19 innings in the last 2 ball games here, and they obviously haven't won because they can't score runs. Just really frustrating stuff out of the Phillies offense, especially coming off that huge series where they did score a lot of runs against the Mets. Hopefully they can at least come away with a victory this afternoon against the Astros and move forward on a high note down over to Atlanta for this next 3-game series. As I said, it was 1-0 going into that 8th inning last night in that loss. The Astros had the lead. The Phillies couldn't score in their half of the inning. And then the Astros came up and yet again hit a solo home run in the 8th inning against the Phillies. just like on Tuesday night when Ranger Suarez allowed that solo home run in the 8th inning, ended up losing that game 1-0 to the Astros because of that solo home run. Well, last night, the Astros had that 1-0 lead going into the 8th inning, going into the bottom half of their 8th inning, and then again hit a solo home run to get an insurance run to take a 2-0 lead going into the 9th inning. And that's just not what you want when you're facing the Houston Astros, because they have one of the best, if not the best, closers in all of Major League Baseball, Josh Hader, to come in and just slam the door on offenses. And he did just that both Tuesday night and Wednesday night against the Phillies. He came in for the 9th inning, shut them down, recorded both saves those nights. And just unfortunately for the Phillies, 2 straight losses, 2 straight shutouts. Now, the person who led up that home run in last night's loss to the Astros has been struggling all year out of the Phillies bullpen, has been very inconsistent after a terrific, a phenomenal season last year in 2024 in which he was an all-star for the Phillies. You might know who I'm talking about before I say his name here, but that is Matt Strahm is who I am talking about, the Phillies left-hander, late-inning, high-leverage reliever out of the bullpen. He, as I said, had a great year last year, but hasn't been the same so far in 2025 through this first half of the season to this point. Matt Strahm has been struggling. He allowed that solo home run in the 8th inning to the Astros in last night's loss, so the Astros could pick up that insurance run and end up winning that ball game 2-0. Strahm has allowed a run in 4 of his last 6 appearances out of the Phillies bullpen, and in those 6 appearances, he has allowed 7 hits, 1 walk, and of those 4 runs, 2 came off of home runs in his previous 6 appearances, his previous 6 innings out of the Phillies bullpen. Honestly, if you've been watching the Phillies, or even if you just keep track of the stats after a game, if you miss the game, it seems as though every time Matt Strahm comes into the ballgame this year, he's getting into trouble, he's letting up runs, he's blowing games. Just not what you want, especially out of the Phillies bullpen. That has been inconsistent, that has been a weakness in 2025. You need to be able to count on a guy like Matt Strahm, who is one of your better relievers, who is one of your top options to go to there in the back end in the high leverage late inning situations. He's not getting the job done in 2025, and that just makes this bullpen a lot more worrisome, a lot more alarming as they head into the second half of the season, into the playoff push, and trying to win a World Series championship. That just so much more increases the necessity for a high leverage late inning bullpen arm at the trade deadline, or even 2 high leverage bullpen arms at the deadline to help shore up this weak Phillies bullpen. And speaking of a high leverage late inning bullpen arm that the Phillies could trade for as we near this July 31st trade deadline in just over a month, could be Arizona Diamondbacks left-handed reliever Jalen Beeks. Now, if you watched my previous video, I had mentioned that Shelby Miller, the veteran right-hander out of the Diamondbacks bullpen, could be a trade option for the Phillies as well. This time, I'm going to be flipping over to the left-handed side. Jalen Beeks is a left-handed reliever for the Diamondbacks, late-inning guy. He's a 31-year-old veteran. He also has some Major League starting experience, just like Shelby Miller. Not as much as Shelby Miller, but he does have some experience there. If for some reason a team trades for him and needs somebody to do a spot start, even though the Phillies have guys for that. But that's an option for him. He is having an incredible season for the Diamondbacks in 2025, one of his better years in his career. He's 2-0 with a 2.92 ERA. He's got 11 holds, 1 save, and opponents are batting a career 193 against Jalen Beeks so far in 2025. In 37 innings. He's been mostly used in the 7th and 8th innings for the Diamondbacks. So obviously a late inning high leverage guy, which the Phillies need help with in their bullpen this year. He's on an expiring contract. He'll be a free agent after the season. So it shouldn't take much to trade for him simply because of that, simply because of his age as well. But he is having a good season, so could be a very good option for the Phillies that's not going to break the bank, not going to require a massive prospect haul from the Phillies if they were to trade for him at the deadline. As I mentioned in the previous video with Shelby Miller, the Diamondbacks have been hit big with the injury bug, particularly in this month of June. They lost their starting pitcher Corbin Burns to a season-ending injury, as well as two of their relievers to season-ending injuries. They also lost their catcher Gabriel Moreno. He was placed on the IL with a hand injury. And then their All-Star, 2023 All-Star, and National League Rookie of the Year outfielder Corbin Carroll also joined Moreno on the injured list with a chip fracture in his wrist. They're both going to miss some time. And if they are two key players, obviously the pitchers as well, for the Diamondbacks, just tough to win games when you're losing that many reliable, that many dependable, that many important key players to your team, both as pitchers, defensively, pitching, offensively, all of that with Carroll and Moreno. Now the Diamondbacks could fall out of the playoff picture with those injuries as we near this deadline and become sellers. Right now the Diamondbacks are 8.5 games back in the National League West, a tough National League West that features the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants, the San Diego Padres. Obviously, the Rockies are in the bottom, just having a horrible season. And then there's the Diamondbacks, who are still a good team. Unfortunately, they're just in a very tough division. So they sit 8.5 games back of first place. They're also now 3 games out of a National League wild card spot. So if they continue to lose ball games, they could be sellers. And a guy like Jalen Beeks, the left-hander, out of their bullpen, a high-leverage late-inning guy, could make sense as a trade candidate for the Philadelphia Phillies to help improve their weak bullpen. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Phillies Daily. I'm your host, Mike Henley. Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe for more Phillies content right here on Phillies Daily. Make sure you guys tune in next time to see what we have to talk about with the next video. Hopefully I'm talking about a Phillies win as we move into this Atlanta Braves series. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, go Phils.